Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our podcast.
Today we're covering the first 2 seasons of the anime Sonic X.
Created in 2003, this series focuses on Sonic and his friends as they are transported to Earth caused by chaos control, and they must figure out a way to get back home.
And I was really excited to rewatch this series because I remember growing up watching it on my Game Boy when they would used to put episodes and stuff on the cartridges to watch for free. And it did air on TV, but I didn't watch it all the time as it aired. I watched a little bit on whatever I was given as a gift, a little bit on TV, and a little bit on the internet.
And I watched it never.
Right. And I never saw the entire series from beginning and just like select episodes. I mean like a pretty big chunk of episodes, just not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 3 seasons, but right now we're just talking about the first 2 seasons because recently Netflix put the show on their website. But when you go there, there's supposed to be 3 seasons, and they only have the first 2. The third one is the Metarex arc, and what's considered the best arc. It's not on there, so you're not even seeing the entire series.
Henceforth, wow. This podcast is only seasons 1 and 2.
Right.
So we will get to 3 once we watch it.
Right.
But I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised that I really liked it. There was a lot of goofiness, a lot of things I didn't understand that Rascal had to explain. And
yeah, there was quite a bit of that.
yeah, but it was fun to watch. I learned a lot more about the characters. Like everyone else, I played the video games, but I didn't watch the shows.
Right.
So my familiarity is through the games themselves.
Right. And it made sense that this show would be vastly different from the games. And in a way it was. It wasn't like a whole step away from it like the live action almost attempted to do. Mm-hmm. But in here it just was trying to do its own thing with the show, considering its last show, which was just called Sonic the Hedgehog or Sonic Sat AM if you want to call it that, was very successful for its really dark undertones and a plot line. And here it was definitely more lighthearted and silly and goofy, and in a way it was tending to be like Pokemon because they thought the series would take off. It did, but it didn't have the staying power as Pokemon.
Right.
Considering it was made by 4Kids Entertainment, which does all of the dubs and editing and stuff for Pokemon, that was pretty ironic.
Now, what I didn't care for, my one biggest gripe, complaint with the show is that Shadow took too dang long to come out. Yes. And then they killed my Shadow off.
Yeah, and for one point I understand they were trying to line up with the game because it did happen in the game, but he did come back.
One of the games.
Yeah, but he did come back as one of his clones. So I don't know if they're going to use that storyline for the show because we haven't seen season 3.
Right. He
came in season 2 like a couple of these other characters. Season 1 introduced just Sonic, Tails, Amy, Knuckles, and a few others. Season 2
Cream and cheese.
Right. And season 2 introduced a few more like Big, Vector, Shadow, and I think they had the Chaos villain, I think. It was some type of water-like villain that was actually interesting. And they didn't focus on them that long because
the Hydra from like one of the games.
Yes, yeah, it was like a Chaos Hydra monster thing. And by the end of it, it does feel like it's the end of the series, but you know, if you grew up with it, there's one more story left, and it's sort of a big time jump if you've seen it. And for here, it was just a little odd how they had it, like when they had these creatures come to Earth. And here they set up this universe as it used to be Sonic's world and Earth were the same thing, and then they got separate because it's chaos control, and now it's like it's 2 different places, and now it's 2 different planets. Trying to line up with the video games where sometimes Sonic's on his own planet, and sometimes it looks like he's on Earth, so they kind of have their own explanation of that.
And we've played quite a few different varieties, or versions, I should say, of the Sonic games. So, yeah, it was fun.
Right.
And I'm really glad that I did watch it. And Dr. Eggman, that was another thing. It was just so much Dr. Eggman. Oh my gosh.
That's the most you'll ever get.
Yeah.
If you're an Eggman fan, you will love that he is in here just pretty much every episode.
Yes.
And they still keep the plot of them getting the Chaos Emeralds, because the Chaos Emeralds are the key to them getting back home. Well, they get them, then they lose them. Then they get them, then they lose them. Then they get them. And then they finally
it's
keep
usually
them.
Chris's fault.
Yeah. And one of the downsides of the show, there are very few, because when you're watching it, it seems like the best thing ever. Now it's sort of kind of goofy and crazy, and you realize there were a lot of flaws, but it's still enjoyable. One of the things that people agree on even years later was that people really just didn't care for Chris. They were trying to have another Ash Ketchum. There's only one Ash Ketchum. And it did say because of how popular Pokemon was, they thought they would kind of have the same thing with this show. And they tried to have another Ash Ketchum with Chris. It didn't work because you didn't feel sympathy for him because of how they wrote him, both in personality and how it's set up. It was nothing really to get attached to. With Ash, you knew he persevered, he did his best, he wanted to be the very best like no one ever was,
right.
And the adventures and stuff, and it was fun. With Chris, there was nothing really to relate to and get attached to because everything contradicted him because you're supposed to be like, oh, he's just like every other kid in a mansion with a butler and a maid with the dad, a CEO of a company, and the mom's an actress. Yes, that's very relatable. And then you had this sort of plot line that Chris was always
his uncle, that's a race car driver.
Right, and his grandfather who's like Doc from Back to the Future and a lab and everything. And he's got friends at school. And here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. They keep bringing up this thing, even towards the end, that his parents were never there. Or they were always so busy with work or something, they were never home, and he was always by himself. Here's the problem. 1, he's got plenty of things to do. 2, he had Sonic and his friends. 3, he had human friends. 4, he had the butler and the maid who were his friends and weren't just, there.
And his grandfather.
Right, and his grandfather and his uncle. 4, there were a lot of times when the parents did come back home to spend time with him. Even when they thought he had a cold, they dropped everything, dropped their jobs and stuff to go see him and take care of him.
Right.
So the whole thing of him being angry because they weren't there didn't make sense because they were there when they wanted to be. Right. So that whole plot line was unreasonable.
Well, that happens in a lot of shows. You always say, plot hole, plot hole.
Yeah.
That was a plot hole.
It's a quote what character reviewed is that, oh, gee, your life sounds so bad. I wish my life was as terrible as yours.
So we got to see a lot more of Cream and Cheese.
Right.
A lot more of Amy and find out just how bat crazy she is about Sonic. And then one of the episodes that stood out to me is when Sonic was late for a date, and she was upset that he was late. And then she ended up going out with Chris's uncle because he said he was supposed to meet him and they had a race. And they had these adventures during the day. And then finally Sonic shows up, and instead of mentioning the date, he goes racing with the uncle. And Amy was furious.
Right. And then you find out he didn't forget is that he kept getting sidetracked by villains. But by the time he got there, he's like, it's probably too late. I'm just go ahead and do this other thing I'm supposed to do. This one was you, blockhead. Right. And like I said,
another one that stood out that was probably one of the goofiest episodes of all is when they had the so-called martial arts event.
Is that no one knew martial arts?
And
no one knew martial arts except one character. And one that stood out for me is that I remember even as a kid, besides the first 2 episodes that I had on loop because I owned them, it was one where they were playing a game of baseball for one of the Chaos Emeralds.
Okay.
And they were like, but they don't know how to play baseball. They're not registered players. They don't know how to do it. They just play it. They just play it. If things went wrong, things went batshit crazy. Everything was just wonky. And they got the emerald anyway. It's like it doesn't even matter. And at this rate.
Right.
And they almost had this other plot set up where they're hiding from the government because there's giant talking animals and stuff. And they kind of went somewhere with that, but it wasn't as big as they thought it would be. It wasn't like here in the movies now where there'll be a big manhunt and they gotta run across the country or something because the government's hightailing and just looking for them relentlessly. Mm-hmm. They were pretty chill about it after a while. Then the president was like, I think supposed to be a chubby Bill Clinton. And he was pretty okay with it after seeing he wasn't the third. Like, okay, you fight Eggman. Okay, you take care of it, Daddy. You could stay. And there were actually a lot of episodes that stuck out for me from ones that I grew up with. And I think the other one, besides the baseball one, it'll be one is after they were revealed to the world. And they didn't do, like I said, the government hunting them down or anything. They did this one where they were just going to the city to have some fun. Now they didn't have to hide in the house anymore because they were kind of getting cabin fever. And when they went out, they kind of were getting stares. Like the whole time they were getting stares. They were like, what the hell is this? And there were people, the kids thought they were toys or something. Or maybe they thought they were Pokemon. And they wanted to buy them and stuff. And it was just this weird episode. And there were times they tried to go by themselves. And if it wasn't them staring, they were kind of like celebrities. But they go, oh, I gotta touch it. And they were dragging them everywhere. And there were some people that were kind of rude, saying, why are the animals out of their cages and stuff. And it was like a really weird episode because it doesn't go either way you expect, whether the government chases them down or the people being like interested in them and their celebrities. It was just such a weird episode that it stuck out for me, besides them playing baseball or going on a cruise and knowing good and well that Sonic can't swim and hates water but drags him out there anyway.
Right. Can we go back to the so-called martial arts challenge?
Yes.
And Chris cheated.
Yes.
That was one of the worst things when he said, but you cheated. He said, so what? I won. And it was like, that's when I was like, Chris, there's a problem with you.
Yeah.
And everyone was cheating and doing everything. And it was like, how is this a martial arts challenge? There's no honor. There's no rules. There's no nothing. And everyone was just doing anything.
And the one that do martial arts lost.
Yes.
It was like, what is this? This is no sports festival.
And then Chris said, oh, I feel bad. I'm like, okay, you feel bad? Then renounce your win. But he never did that.
No. He said, I'm always playing the good guy. I want you to always like to be the bad guy. You can't pull some reverse Team Rocket and expect us to actually be okay with it.
And Team Rocket is the wannabe bad guy.
Right.
They are the wannabe bad guys.
Oh, speaking of which, I think I would mention that since because this is mostly edited and has a lot of voice actors from 4Kids, we actually saw in the end credits that Team Rocket was in it.
Yes, Eric Stewart, Veronica.
Actually, Veronica Taylor for Ash Ketchum.
Right.
Rachel Lillis for Jessie, and then I think Jimmy Zappi for me. Yes. That's right.
And Rascal Khan, she says, wait, look. And then she showed the credits. It was like, oh my goodness. So yes, they all got to appear in this series, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
Especially for those of you who were watching Pokemon at the time when it aired. I'm sure that was a treat and made you really, really happy.
Yes, like, yay! Now, as for the other part that was sort of weird for the show was that there were a lot of edits in it. You know, Pokemon has this thing where they can't show certain things, or this weird thing where they can't have rice balls in there, even though some episodes pass now. Mm-hmm. For here, there were some scenes and dialogue edited out. So when we watched it, Mama was very confused with some things. Like, there was a conversation Chris was having with Shadow, and each time it went from his flashback to back to him, he would be in different places, he would have bruises and stuff. She said it wouldn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And I had to explain that there was actually a fight, but they took out all the fight scenes and just had the dialogue. So it looked kind of jarring that he was all these different places. He was actually getting hit in between shots. Okay. It was like a mini fight. And 4Kids edited out because it was violence. And they didn't want these kids seeing it. And they were like 12 and under. So they just edited it out and just had a conversation. Made it look like he just got weak. But it doesn't work when he's got bruises and stuff on him and it's unexplained in between. And the problem with that is that they allowed Shadow's backstory, which involved the death of a little girl, but they allowed that. But Chris getting hit by a hedgehog was the draw the line.
Yeah, I was really surprised at that and how he kept, talking about Maria and how he really missed her. And it was like, wow, this is pretty dark to have in this one. And it's also the episode where Shadow got killed off, that was a really dark episode.
Right, like you allowed that? You allowed all this, but him getting hit by Shadow was the thing you had to edit out. Oh.
Well, I can't wait till we see the official season 3, and if you guys have seen seasons 1 and 2, and even 3, let us know what you think in the comments below, and how much do we have to look forward to seeing season 3.
Right, and be sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get updates on new Paws podcasts.
Including the season 3 podcast for Sonic X.
Yes. So, thank you so much for watching. I'm Rascal Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.
And reporters sitting flashing lights. Trying to walk around, man, who the hell are you? What you wanna do? Well, man, it's on you. Man, it's on you. With her in my dreams, she was my queen. A castle in the mountaintops, rivers and streams. Plucking sunlight from the sky in my pocket.